Eleanor Vance opened her eyes and knew instantly that something had changed. Not in the hospital room, decorated with the lavishness she herself had approved for the VIP wing of her clinic, but in the air, in the movements of the staff, in the way the chief of medicine, Dr. Simon Hayes, was speaking to Matthew just outside the door. Her husband's voice was muffled, but Eleanor could distinguish the intonations. She fluttered her eyelids, leaving a thin slit, an old trick she used in business negotiations when she wanted to hear what was being said by pretending to be distracted. Matthew. Dr. Hayes's voice sounded weary and cautious. I have to be honest. Eleanor's condition is critical. The liver failure is progressing, despite all our therapies. Her organs are shutting down, one by one. We're doing everything we can, but what? The tension in Matthew's voice was sharp. A maximum of 3 days. Maybe less. I'm sorry. Silence. Eleanor could hear her own heart still beating. 3 days. So, the doctors had finally admitted what she had been feeling for the last week. Her body was refusing to serve her. 49 years old. A vast empire of high-end wellness clinics, prime commercial real estate in downtown Chicago, stocks, assets, and 3 days. The door to her room opened. Eleanor didn't stir. Matthew walked in, and she caught the scent of his cologne, the same expensive one she had given him for his birthday. He sat on the edge of the bed and took her hand. His fingers were warm, well manicured. 3 years ago, those hands had seemed like a rescue from loneliness. A handsome man, 10 years her junior, attentive, courteous. He had been a manager at one of her clinics. When he first invited her to dinner, Eleanor had felt like a schoolgirl. She had no children. Her first marriage had dissolved 20 years ago, after which she had thrown herself entirely into her business. Building, expanding, acquiring. Everything she now possessed, she had earned herself before her marriage to Matthew. He had come into her life when she turned 46, when she suddenly realized her house was empty and the evenings stretched on endlessly. Matthew leaned closer. Eleanor barely breathed, keeping her facial muscles relaxed. He thought she was unconscious from the heavy sedatives. That's what the nurses had told her. Earlier that morning, her husband had asked if she could hear anything, and they had replied that her consciousness was suppressed by strong medication. What happened next, Eleanor would remember until her last breath. Matthew squeezed her palm, ran his thumb over her wrist, and whispered, almost tenderly, "Finally, I've waited so long for this." Eleanor tensed internally, but her body did not betray her. "Your house, your millions," Matthew continued, a new tone in his voice she had never heard before. "It's all going to be mine now. 3 whole years. For 3 years I put up with it, pretended, listened to your lectures about business, about responsibility, smiled at your friends, got into bed with you. And now," he chuckled, "finally, it's all over." He stood up, released her fingers, adjusted her blanket with a show of care, and walked out. Eleanor heard him speak to someone in the hallway, likely a nurse, telling them to watch his wife carefully, that he would be back soon. His voice was full of concern and grief. When the door closed, Eleanor opened her eyes. The ceiling swam before her, not from weakness, but from rage and horror, because everything that had been happening for the last few months suddenly clicked into a clear picture, the gradual decline of her health. First, mild nausea, then weakness, dizziness. Doctors had attributed it to stress and overwork. She had thought so too. But 3 weeks ago, when another attack hit her right in the office, she was rushed to the clinic. The test showed strange abnormalities. Then Eleanor, not trusting even her own doctors, sent a blood sample to an independent lab in another state. The result had arrived 5 days ago, when she was already lying here. The toxicology report revealed traces of a substance that shouldn't have been there. A rare drug used in palliative care to ease the suffering of terminally ill patients. In small doses, it causes drowsiness. In large doses, liver failure and the subsequent shutdown of all organs. Eleanor hadn't believed it then. She thought it was a lab error but requested a retest. The second analysis confirmed it. And now, after Matthew's words, there was no doubt left. She had been systematically poisoned. For months, Eleanor tried to sit up, but her body wouldn't obey. Her hands trembled. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do. 3 days. If the doctors were right, she had 3 days to fix everything. She knew Matthew. She knew he was handsome, charming, and empty inside, but she thought a comfortable life was enough for him. Fool. He wanted more. He wanted everything. Eleanor slowly turned her head toward the door. In the hallway, someone was clattering with a bucket. She could hear the splash of water, the swish of a mop. She called out softly, "Miss?" The noise stopped. A few seconds later, the door creaked open, and a hospital assistant peeked into the room. A young woman, thin, with dark hair tied back in a clip. Her face was simple, pleasant, without makeup. Eleanor had seen her before. She mopped the floors in the hallway, changed linens, emptied bedpans. A hard, thankless job. "Are you all right, ma'am?" The assistant stepped closer, concerned. "I'll get a nurse." "No, don't." Eleanor forced herself to speak clearly. "What's your name?" "Isabella." "Isabella Garcia." "Isabella, close the door. I need your help." The girl was bewildered but closed the door. She came closer, peering into Eleanor's face. Are you okay? Should I get the doctor?" "I am perfectly conscious," Eleanor said, looking her straight in the eye. "And I need you to do one thing for me. Don't tell anyone I'm lucid. Not my husband, not the doctors. But I need you to call my attorney, William Davis. His number is in my cell phone. It's in the nightstand. Tell him Eleanor Vance needs him to come immediately. It's a personal matter." Isabella shook her head. "But I can't. That's not part of my job. If they find out..." "If you do everything I say," Eleanor paused, gathering her strength, "you will get so much money that you will never work as an assistant again. You will never have to mop another floor or empty another bedpan. I'm serious." The young woman looked at her with disbelief, but something flickered in her eyes. Hope, despair. Eleanor could see this girl was cornered by life. People like her grasp at any straw. Are you serious?" "Absolutely. But there isn't much time. Call Davis. Now." Isabella darted to the nightstand, retrieved the phone. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through the contacts. She found the right name, pressed call. Eleanor heard the long rings. Finally, someone answered. "Mr. Davis? I'm sorry. I'm calling from the clinic, from Miss Eleanor Vance. She's asking you to come right away. Yes, she's conscious. She says it's a personal matter. Very urgent." The attorney's voice asked something. Isabella repeated herself. Then she handed the phone to Eleanor. She took it, barely able to hold it. "William, it's me," she said. "I need to draft a new will. Today. Now. Come here and bring a notary. And not a word to anyone." Davis was silent for a second on the other end, then answered curtly, "I'm on my way. I'll be there in an hour." Eleanor gave the phone back to Isabella. "Thank you. Now, all you have to do is wait here and be quiet. When he arrives, you will stay as a witness. Understand?" "But why me? Why do you trust me?" Eleanor gave a weak smile. "Because you're a stranger. You're not from my circle. My husband can't buy you or intimidate you. You're of no interest to him, and I need you exactly as you are." Isabella sank onto a chair by the wall, horrified by what was happening. Eleanor closed her eyes, gathering her strength. An hour. She had to hold on for an hour. Time dragged on. Outside the window, it was getting dark. The fall evening was setting in early. Isabella sat in silence, occasionally glancing at Eleanor, who dozed fitfully but never lost consciousness. Exactly an hour later, the door opened, and William Davis walked in. A man of 45, fit, in a sharp suit, with the penetrating gaze of an experienced lawyer. Behind him was his assistant, Jessica, a woman of 25, holding a tablet with a wary expression on her face. "Eleanor," Davis approached the bed, studying her face. "What's going on?" "Close the door," Eleanor commanded. "Sit down and listen carefully." Davis nodded to Jessica, who shut the door. Isabella remained by the wall, as if afraid to move. Davis sat down, took out a voice recorder. "May I record this, for legal clarity?" "You may." Eleanor told him everything, briefly and clearly, about the lab results, about the toxic substance found in her blood, about what Matthew had said just an hour ago. Davis listened without interrupting, but his face grew harder and harder. "Do you have these lab reports?" "In the safe at home. The code is my mother's date of birth." "Get them. Make copies." "This is grounds for a criminal investigation," Davis said slowly. "But first, we need to secure your final wishes. Otherwise, all your assets will legally pass to your husband." "That's exactly why I called you. I want to leave everything to this young woman." Eleanor nodded towards Isabella, to Isabella Garcia. "And she will pay you for your services in full. We'll include that in the will as well." Davis turned to look at the assistant. She had gone pale but nodded her head in agreement. "But why her?" "Because she is here. Because I trust her. And because I don't have time for doubts. All of my assets are premarital. I have no children. It's mine, and I have the right to dispose of it as I see fit. Draft the will so that Matthew cannot contest it." Davis nodded. "We'll need a notary, and a doctor who can confirm your legal capacity at the time of signing. Without that, the will is vulnerable. Arrange it. Today. Now." "Understood. Jessica, call a notary on duty and find a neurologist or psychiatrist, an independent one from another clinic. Have them come immediately." Jessica stepped out, pulling out her phone. Davis turned to Isabella. "Miss, do you understand what is about to happen?" Isabella nodded uncertainly. "Not entirely. You will inherit all of Eleanor Vance's assets. The house, the clinics, the real estate, the bank accounts. You will become a very wealthy woman, but you will also become a target for her husband. He will try to contest the will. He might try to intimidate you, or bribe you, or worse. Are you prepared for that?" Isabella was silent. Then she said slowly, "Do I have to be?" "Yes, because legally we will do everything by the book, but psychologically it will be a war." Eleanor intervened. "Isabella, I'm not asking you to be a saint. When you get the money, do what you want with it. But I ask one thing of you. See the case about his poisoning through to the end. Make sure he goes to prison, so he can't kill anyone else. And generously reward everyone who helps you in this. Do you promise?" The young woman looked at her, tears welling in her eyes. "I promise." Half an hour later, the room was filled with people. A notary, an elderly man with a briefcase and a seal, a psychiatrist from a neighboring hospital, a woman in her 50s, Davis, Jessica, Isabella, and Eleanor herself. The psychiatrist conducted an examination, asking questions. "What is today's date? Where are you? Who is the president?" Eleanor answered clearly. The doctor wrote on a form, "Patient is oriented to time, place, and person. Consciousness is clear. Legally competent. Signature, seal." The notary opened his laptop and began typing the text of the will. He read it aloud. "I, Eleanor Vance, being of sound mind and firm memory, do hereby bequeath all of my property, which at the time of my death shall belong to me, to Isabella Garcia." He looked up. "Miss Vance, do you understand that you are disinheriting your spouse?" "I understand." "Are you acting of your own free will, without coercion?" "Yes." "Do you confirm this?" "I confirm." The notary nodded and printed the form on a portable mini printer. Davis aimed his phone's camera, recording the entire procedure. Eleanor signed with a trembling hand. The notary affixed his seal and certified it. The witnesses were Jessica and a nurse from a different ward to preclude any claims of collusion. When it was all over, the notary placed the document in his folder. "I will file this for safekeeping with the notary office. I'll have certified copies made tomorrow morning. Everything will be in accordance with the law." Eleanor nodded. Her strength was failing. Davis leaned over her. "Eleanor, I'll handle the toxicology reports. I'll gather all the analyses. I'll contact the district attorney's office. Matthew will be held accountable." "Thank you," she whispered. Everyone left. Only Isabella remained. She stood by the bed, not knowing what to say. "Go home," Eleanor said tiredly. "I'll see you tomorrow." "Maybe." Isabella nodded and left. Eleanor was alone. She stared into the darkness outside the window and thought, 3 days, maybe less, but she had done it. She had deprived Matthew of the very thing he was killing her for. And that was the only thing that mattered now. She passed away during the night, peacefully, without suffering. The nurses found her in the morning. When Matthew was informed, he sobbed in the hallway, loudly, demonstratively. The clinic staff consoled him. He thanked them, clutching a handkerchief, while sparks of triumph danced in his eyes. His morning began with a phone call. Matthew Asher was sitting in Eleanor's office, his office now, as he saw it shuffling through papers. Real estate deeds, bank statements, lease agreements, all this wealth now belonged to him. 3 years of waiting. 3 years of playing the loving husband. And this was the result. He leaned back in the leather chair, stretching. Outside, it was a clear fall day. The leaves on the trees burned yellow and orange. Beautiful. Matthew smiled. Life was looking up. His phone vibrated. Jennifer, he answered. Yes, my love. How are things? His mistress's voice was cautious. Perfect. She died last night. Quietly, no witnesses. The doctors said liver failure. No questions asked. Are you sure? Absolutely. I calculated everything. The dosage was minimal, spread out over months. The drug breaks down quickly, leaving almost no trace. Even if someone wanted to check, they won't find anything. Jennifer paused. And the will? What will? She never made one. I checked. All the property was premarital. No kids. That means I inherit as the spouse. The law is on my side. I hope you're right. Jenny, don't worry. In 6 months, I'll have everything settled, sell the clinics, the real estate, and we'll leave. Wherever you want. Abroad. There's enough money for several lifetimes. Jennifer sighed. All right. Just be careful. Don't rush. Play the grieving husband. I'm a professional, Matthew chuckled. Don't lecture me. He hung up and reached for the cabinet where Eleanor kept her collection of fine brandy. He poured himself a glass, took a sip. Excellent. Everything in this house was excellent. And now it was all his. There was a knock on the door. The housekeeper, an elderly woman with red eyes, entered. Mr. Asher, your attorney is here. Mr. William Davis. Matthew frowned. That Davis had always been too smart, too observant. Eleanor had trusted him with all her legal affairs. What did he want? Let him in. Davis appeared in the office, trim in his formal suit, his face serious. He didn't offer a hand to shake, just nodded. Matthew, my condolences. Thank you. Matthew put on a mournful expression. It's a tragedy. Undoubtedly. I need to discuss a few legal matters with you. I'm listening. Davis sat down without waiting for an invitation, taking out a folder. Eleanor Vance left a will. Matthew tensed. Really? How could she have not said anything to him about a will? And what's in it? All property belonging to her at the time of her death has been bequeathed to another person. A pause. Matthew didn't immediately grasp the meaning of what was said. Then he asked again, Meaning? Meaning you are not the beneficiary of the will. Eleanor disposed of her assets differently. Matthew jumped to his feet. That's impossible. She was in a coma. When did she have time? Davis looked at him coldly. The will was executed the day before her death, in the presence of a notary, a psychiatrist who confirmed her legal capacity, and 2 witnesses. It is all perfectly legal. To whom? Matthew felt a chill run down his spine. Who did she leave it to? That will be announced at the notary's office. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Your presence is required. I'll contest it! Matthew slammed his fist on the desk. She was incompetent, sick. We have a medical conclusion of her full legal capacity at the time of signing. We have a video recording. We have the notary's testimony. Davis stood up. I suggest you prepare yourself mentally and hire your own attorney. He left without another word. Matthew remained alone, breathing heavily. A will. How dare she? How did she even manage it? He grabbed his phone and dialed Jennifer. We have a problem. A huge problem. The next morning, Matthew arrived at the notary's office. Jennifer was with him. He introduced her as a family friend, supporting him in his time of grief. The notary, the same elderly man, met them in his office. William Davis and his assistant, Jessica, were already there. Where is the heir? Matthew asked sharply. The heiress has sent a representative, the notary replied. Her interests are represented by attorney William Davis, based on a notarized power of attorney. Who is she? Where is she? The notary opened the folder and took out a document. According to the last will and testament of Eleanor Vance, the sole heir to all her property is Isabella Garcia, residing at— Who is she? Matthew couldn't believe his ears. I've never heard of her. A hospital assistant at the clinic where your wife passed away, the notary confirmed. Jennifer grabbed Matthew's arm, squeezing it as a warning. He swallowed his rage and forced himself to speak calmly. This is absurd. Eleanor didn't know this woman. How could she leave her everything? Davis answered evenly. A testator has the right to bequeath their property to any person. The law does not require an explanation of motives. But she was sick, incompetent. On the contrary. Davis laid a medical report on the table. Here is the assessment from the psychiatrist who conducted an evaluation immediately before the signing of the will. The conclusion: legally competent, clear consciousness, free will. There is also a video recording of the procedure. The notary personally certified her will. Everything was executed flawlessly. Matthew felt the floor give way beneath him. And what about me? The notary explained patiently, as if stating the obvious. Your wife's assets were acquired before the marriage. Therefore, they are not considered marital property. As the surviving spouse, you are only entitled to your share of the assets acquired during the 3 years of marriage. The house, the clinics, the commercial real estate, the accounts, all of that belonged to Eleanor before the marriage. According to the will, these assets passed to Miss Garcia. So, I get nothing? You have your salary for the past 3 years, your personal savings, the car registered in your name. That is your share of the marital property. Matthew was silent. His head was spinning. 3 years. For 3 years he had poisoned her, endured, pretended. For what? So some goddamn assistant could get millions? Where is she? He asked quietly, dangerously. Miss Garcia has filed a petition to accept the inheritance through her representative, the notary replied. You do not need to know her whereabouts. I want to talk to her. That is not possible, Davis interjected. My client does not wish to meet with you. I will contest the will. I'll sue. That is your right. But I warn you, we have every reason to believe that a challenge will be unsuccessful. The will is legally sound. The testator's will is clearly expressed. Medical documents confirm her capacity. There are no grounds to declare the will invalid. Matthew stood up, swaying. Jennifer took his arm. They walked out of the office in silence. On the street, Matthew stopped and turned to Jennifer. It's all gone, he whispered. Not everything, Jennifer said, her gaze hard. We'll find this girl. We'll make her renounce it, intimidate her, bribe her. It doesn't matter. The important thing is to act fast. Davis has her hidden somewhere. We'll find her. I have connections, people who know how to find people. Give me a couple of days. Matthew nodded. Hatred churned in his chest. Eleanor had tricked him. Even in death, she had managed to get her revenge. But he wouldn't give up, not after everything he had invested. Meanwhile, a meeting was underway in William Davis's office. He sat at his desk across from Jessica and a private investigator, Michael Johnson, a former police detective, a solid man of 42 with graying hair. Here's the situation, Davis began. Garcia is safe for now. She has moved to a neighboring state, rented a room, and found temporary work. But Asher will be looking for her. He won't stop. What can he do? Jessica asked. Intimidate, bribe, coerce her into renouncing the inheritance. In the worst-case scenario, physically eliminate her if she refuses. We're dealing with a man who systematically poisoned his wife. He's capable of anything. Johnson nodded. I'll pull all the surveillance footage from the clinic, track everyone who had contact with Vance in her final months. I'll check pharmacies, see what Asher was buying, what kind of drugs. Good. One more thing. We need a criminal case. Without it, Asher will remain free and continue to hunt Isabella. I've already prepared a statement for the district attorney's office. I'm attaching the toxicology reports that Eleanor commissioned. They clearly show a substance in her blood that she was not prescribed by doctors. Jessica clarified. What if the official autopsy doesn't confirm poisoning? It will. Eleanor was meticulous. She sent samples to 2 independent labs. The results are identical. Moreover, she kept a journal of her symptoms, noting the deterioration by date. It's all circumstantial, but compelling evidence. Who will we give the case to? Detective Rodriguez. He's with the CPD, a professional, doesn't take bribes. If anyone can bring this to trial, it's him. Johnson stood up. I'm starting now. I'll have the first results for you tomorrow. He left. Davis turned to Jessica. Contact Isabella. Tell her everything is going according to plan. Tell her to lay low, not to draw attention. If anything happens, call me immediately. Got it. And one more thing. Pull up all of Vance's documents. Contracts, deeds, statements. I want to be sure every asset is legally protected. Asher will try to find loopholes. We'll close them in advance. Jessica nodded and left. Davis was alone. He opened his safe, took out a copy of the will, and read it again. Everything was perfect. Every word, every comma. Eleanor Vance was a smart woman. Even as she was dying, she had thought of every detail. He remembered their last conversation in the hospital room, how she had looked at him calmly, without fear. William, I know I'm dying, but I don't want him to get anything, not a single penny. Let him understand that he killed me for nothing. Eleanor, are you sure you want to give everything to Garcia? You barely know her. I know enough. She's honest, works for peanuts, rents a room, is paying off a loan for her deceased mother's medical treatment. You can't buy people like that. You can trust people like that with revenge. Revenge? Yes, I want Matthew to go to prison. I want him to be tried for my murder. And Isabella is a witness. She saw him enter my room. She heard what I said afterward. She will help the investigation. She promised me. Davis had nodded then, and now he was fulfilling the promise made to a dying client. He locked the will back in the safe and picked up the phone. He dialed Detective Rodriguez's number. Detective, it's Davis. I have something for you. A possible homicide by systematic poisoning. I'm sending the documents over. It's a complex case, but a promising one. Rodriguez was silent on the other end. Send them over. I'll take a look. Thank you. I'll await your feedback. Davis hung up. Now, all he could do was wait. Wait for the wheels of justice to start turning, slowly but inevitably. Meanwhile, in a small rented room in a neighboring state, Isabella Garcia sat on an old sofa and stared out the window. A fine fall rain was drizzling outside. The drops ran down the glass, merging into winding streams. She still couldn't believe it. It all felt like a dream. 2 days ago, she was mopping floors in a hospital corridor, earning a tiny salary, counting pennies until payday. And today, Attorney Davis informed her she was the heir to a vast fortune. Isabella wasn't happy. She was scared, because she understood that Vance's husband would not leave her alone. He would come for her. He would search for her. And then what? Her phone vibrated. It was Jessica. Isabella, how are you? I'm okay. Just staying home. Good. Don't go out unless you absolutely have to. Asher has already started looking for you. We're monitoring his actions. He doesn't know where you are yet. But be careful. Okay. One more thing. The detective will want to take your statement soon. About what you saw at the hospital, what Miss Vance said. Be ready. I'm ready, I promised her. Good girl. Hang in there. Isabella hung up. She remembered Eleanor Vance's face, pale and gaunt, but with a clear, steady gaze. She remembered her last words. See the case about his poisoning through to the end. Make sure he goes to prison. She would see it through. Whatever happened, because Eleanor had given her a chance at a different life, and Isabella would not let her down. Outside, the twilight deepened. Somewhere in another city, Matthew Asher was gathering information, making plans, preparing to attack. And here, in a quiet room, a young woman who was a nobody just yesterday was preparing to defend herself. The game had begun, and the stakes were too high to lose. Detective Rodriguez sat in his office at the CPD headquarters and studied the materials sent by Attorney Davis. The folder was thick. Medical reports, toxicology analyses from 2 independent labs, excerpts from the medical history, and the deceased Eleanor Vance's personal journal, where she had recorded her symptoms by date. Rodriguez was an experienced investigator with a reputation for being thorough and incorruptible. He didn't like high-profile cases, but when he took one, he saw it through to the end. He was now reading the toxicology report for the 3rd time. It all added up. Traces of a drug used in palliative care were found in Vance's blood. In high doses, it was lethal. The substance was rare, strictly prescription only. Vance did not have cancer. Where did it come from? Rodriguez picked up the phone and called Davis. "William, I got the materials. A question, did Vance have any medical reason to be taking this drug?" "None whatsoever." Her attending physician confirmed he never prescribed anything like it. In fact, Eleanor herself suspected something was wrong and secretly submitted her blood for analysis at an outside lab. The results are shocking, but they're credible. Understood. Who had access to her food and medicine? Primarily her husband, Matthew Asher. They lived together. He made her tea, brought her pills. The housekeeper came 3 times a week, but she's been with the family for 20 years, thoroughly vetted. Other contacts were sporadic. The husband's motive is the inheritance. Vance owned a network of clinics, commercial real estate, large accounts, all acquired before the marriage. No children. If she had died without a will, everything would have gone to Asher as the sole legal heir. But she left a will. Yes, the day before she died, in favor of a 3rd party, the assistant, Isabella Garcia. Asher was left with nothing. Interesting. So he had motive, means, and opportunity. The classic triad. Exactly. What's more, there's a witness. Garcia heard Vance tell me about her suspicions. She's ready to testify. Where is she now? In a safe place. Asher is actively searching for her, trying to intimidate her into renouncing the inheritance. I fear for her life. Rodriguez frowned. All right. I'm opening a criminal case for 1st-degree murder. I'll order an exhumation and a 2nd forensic medical examination. If the poisoning is confirmed, Asher is going to get a long sentence. Thank you, detective. Don't thank me. Just doing my job. Rodriguez hung up and began to prepare the paperwork to open the criminal case. It would be painstaking work, but he liked cases like this. When everything falls into a clear picture, when the criminal thinks he's gotten away with it and then realizes the net is tightening. 2 days later, the detective obtained a court order for the exhumation of Vance's body. The procedure was conducted discreetly, without media attention. The materials were sent for examination to a leading forensic center. While the experts worked, Rodriguez began to gather circumstantial evidence. He tasked his assistants with pulling surveillance footage from pharmacies in the area where Vance lived. The objective was simple: find out if Asher had purchased that specific drug. The results came in a week later. On the recording from one of the private pharmacies, Matthew Asher was clearly visible. He walks up to the counter, speaks to the pharmacist, hands over cash, and receives a box. The date was 2 months before Vance's death. Rodriguez summoned the pharmacist for questioning, a nervous, frightened woman in her 50s. "Do you remember this man?" the detective asked, showing her a photo of Asher. Yes, I remember him. He came in several times." "What did he buy?" "A drug for palliative therapy. He said his mother had cancer, that the doctors had allowed her to take it at home so she wouldn't suffer." "Did you get a prescription?" The pharmacist went pale. "No. He said he lost the prescription. He offered to pay extra. I agreed. I needed the money." "How many times did he buy it?" 4 or 5 times. I don't remember exactly." Rodriguez nodded. "You do realize you broke the law? Selling prescription drugs without a prescription. And if this drug was used for a murder, you're an accessory." The woman burst into tears. "I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know." "Write a statement. A voluntary confession. It will mitigate your guilt, but you will have to testify in court." She nodded, wiping her tears. Rodriguez dictated the statement to her. She signed it. Another thread leading to Asher was now documented. Meanwhile, the private investigator, Michael Johnson, was conducting his own investigation. He reviewed all the surveillance footage from the clinic where Vance was a patient. He studied who entered her room, when, and for how long. Matthew Asher appeared regularly, bringing fruit, flowers, sitting by her bedside. On camera, he looked like a model husband, but then Johnson noticed a detail. Asher enters with a thermos, stays for 10 minutes, leaves without the thermos. An hour later, a nurse goes in to collect the dishes. The thermos is empty. Johnson pulled the medical records. On that day, Vance's condition had sharply deteriorated. Nausea, weakness, confusion. The doctors attributed it to the progression of her illness. The detective found the nurse and conducted an informal interview. "Do you remember that day?" Asher brought his wife tea in a thermos. "Yes, I remember." Miss Vance drank a little, then said the tea was bitter. "I thought the brew was just strong." "And what did Asher say?" "Nothing. He just smiled and said she was always picky." Johnson recorded the testimony. Another brick in the wall of the prosecution. At the same time, he tracked Asher's activities after the will was read. Matthew had hired people, 2 burly guys from a private security firm. They were scouring the city, questioning Isabella's former colleagues, neighbors, acquaintances, looking for where she had gone. Johnson reported to Davis. "Asher is getting active. His men have already found out that Garcia was renting a room on the outskirts. They questioned the landlady. She said the girl moved out a week ago, left no forwarding address. They'll find her sooner or later." "Yes, they have the resources. We need to get ahead of them. I propose we set up a meeting between Garcia and Asher's men, but under our control. We'll record the attempt at pressure, intimidation. That will be grounds for opening another criminal case, coercion, threats." Davis thought it over. It was risky, but it was a workable option. "I'll talk to Isabella." He contacted Garcia and explained the plan. The young woman was hesitant at first, scared, but Davis convinced her. "Isabella, they're going to find you anyway. It's better if it happens on our terms. We will be nearby. The police will be nearby, you will not be harmed, and Asher will be cornered even further." "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll do it." Johnson arranged for a leak of information. Through an acquaintance at the security agency, he fed Asher's men a tip. Garcia is working at a small private lab in the neighboring city of Springfield. The information reached Matthew in 2 days. He immediately drove there with Jennifer and 2 security guards. The plan was simple: find the girl, scare her, make her sign a renunciation of the inheritance. If she refused, apply more pressure. They tracked Isabella down in the evening as she was leaving the lab, surrounding her on an empty street. Matthew stepped forward, smiling. "Isabella Garcia. At last. We need to talk." The young woman backed away. Matthew continued without raising his voice. "You received something that belongs to me by right. Eleanor was my wife. I took care of her for 3 years. And you're just some random girl who happened to be there at the right moment. Do you think that's fair?" Isabella was silent. Matthew took some papers out of his pocket. "Here is the renunciation of inheritance. Sign it, and I'll give you $300,000. That's enough to pay off your debts and start a new life. If you refuse," he nodded towards the security guards, "you'll regret it." "I won't sign," Isabella managed to say. Matthew's face darkened. Jennifer stepped closer, her voice cloying. "Honey, you don't understand who you're dealing with. Matthew isn't the type to give up. If you don't sign willingly, he'll make you. Painfully. Think about yourself, your health." I said no. One of the security guards moved forward, but at that moment, Johnson emerged from around the corner. Behind him were 2 uniformed police officers. "Freeze! Police!" Matthew froze. Jennifer went pale. The security guards exchanged confused glances. Johnson approached Isabella. "Are you okay?" "Yes," she said, trembling but holding her ground. "They were threatening me, demanding I sign away the inheritance." A police officer was taking notes. Matthew tried to justify himself. "We were just talking. There were no threats." "We have it all on tape," Johnson said, pulling a small recorder from Isabella's pocket. Every word, including the part about her regretting it if she refused. Matthew knew he was caught. The police drew up a report detaining him and Jennifer for questioning. The security guards were released with an order to appear later. At the station, Matthew was held until morning, then released on his own recognizance. But a case was opened. Detective Rodriguez received the materials and initiated proceedings for coercion and making threats. Now, there were 2 cases against Asher, the murder of his wife and threatening the heiress. The situation was becoming critical. Matthew returned to the house that no longer belonged to him. Jennifer was on the sofa, holding her head in her hands and moaning. "It's all falling apart, Matthew. They're backing us into a corner." "Shut up," he snapped. "I'm thinking. What is there to think about? We need to run, before it's too late." "Run where?" "I don't have any money. Eleanor left everything to that damned girl. All I have left is my pathetic salary from the last 3 years, which is long gone." "Then what are we going to do?" Matthew was silent. He knew time was running out. The detective was digging. The PI was collecting evidence. Witnesses were giving testimony. Soon, he would be arrested, and then it would all be over. He needed a plan. A desperate, risky plan. He picked up the phone and dialed the number of one of his security guards. "Listen carefully. I need information on Garcia. Everything you can find. Where she lives, where she works, who's protecting her. I'll pay double the usual rate." The guard agreed. Matthew hung up. Jennifer looked at him in horror. "Are you crazy? After what just happened, you're going to—" "I'm not giving up," Matthew interrupted her. "I spent 3 years on that woman. 3 years. And now some assistant gets everything? No. I will make her renounce it, at any cost." Jennifer stood up. "Then you're on your own. I don't want to go to jail because of your vendetta." "Then get out of here," Matthew threw back. "I don't need you anymore." She slammed the door. Matthew was left alone. He sat in the dark, breathing heavily. He was consumed by hatred. For Eleanor, who had tricked him. For Isabella, who had stolen his future. For Jennifer, who had run away, leaving him alone. For Davis, who had turned everything into a legal war. But he would never give up. At that same time, Detective Rodriguez was reviewing new materials. The forensic report had arrived sooner than expected. The result was unequivocal. Eleanor Vance's death was caused by multiple organ failure, resulting from the systematic administration of a toxic drug. The concentration of the substance in her tissues indicated prolonged poisoning for at least 3 months. Rodriguez called Davis. "William, the report is in. The poisoning is confirmed. I'm issuing a warrant to charge Asher. I'm bringing him in for questioning tomorrow. He might try to flee, so I'm asking the court for him to be remanded in custody. The risk of flight and witness tampering is obvious." "I agree. Keep me posted." Rodriguez ended the call and began to prepare the documents. The noose was tightening. Soon, Matthew Asher would be where he belonged, behind bars. Matthew Asher received the summons at 8 a.m. A courier handed him the envelope and asked for a signature. Matthew opened it, a summons for questioning at the CPD as a suspect in a homicide case. He read it twice. So, the report was ready. They had found proof. There was no time left at all. Matthew threw the summons on the table, grabbed his phone, and dialed the security guard. "Did you find out exactly where Garcia lives in Springfield?" "Yeah. She's renting a room at 17 Maple Street. No security with her, but that PI, Johnson, shows up periodically." "Excellent. How much do I owe you?" "50 grand. You'll get it. Just one more favor. I need you to scare her. For real. So she understands it's either renounce the inheritance or what, find her in a ditch?" The guard paused. "That's different money and different risks. 100 grand in cash, half now, half after." "When?" "Tonight. I'm going myself. You're with me. We'll bring one more guy, a reliable one. Deal." Matthew hung up. Adrenaline was coursing through him. He knew it was madness. The detective was on his tail. Questioning tomorrow. He could be arrested. But if he did nothing, he would lose completely. And if Garcia renounced the inheritance, the case would fall apart. Without the inheritance, there's no motive. Without a motive, the charges are weaker. He packed a bag, cash, documents, a burner phone. He left a note for the housekeeper saying he was going to a friend's for a couple of days, that his nerves were shot. He got in his car and drove to meet the guard. Meanwhile, in Springfield, Isabella Garcia was finishing her workday. The lab closed at 6 p.m. She changed and went outside. November had set in. Cold wind, dampness, it got dark early. Isabella walked along the deserted street toward the bus stop. Her phone vibrated. It was Jessica. "Isabella, where are you?" "I'm heading home. Work's over. Johnson can't meet you today. He's on another case. Be careful. If anything happens, call immediately." "Okay." Isabella put her phone away. She looked around. The street was empty. The streetlights cast a dim glow. She felt uneasy. She quickened her pace. She heard the sound of an engine behind her. A car. Isabella turned around. A black SUV was driving slowly, keeping pace with her. The window rolled down. A stranger was behind the wheel. In the back seat was Matthew Asher. "Isabella Garcia, get in. We need to talk." "No." She backed away. The SUV stopped. The doors flew open. Two men, burly and dressed in dark clothes, jumped out. One grabbed Isabella's arm, the other covered her mouth. She tried to struggle, but she was no match for them. They pushed her into the car, sandwiching her between the guards. The SUV sped off. Matthew turned to her. "You shouldn't have been so stubborn, Isabella. We could have settled this peacefully. Now, we'll have to do it differently." She was silent, gasping for air in terror. The car left the city, turned onto a dirt road, and stopped at an abandoned hangar. Matthew got out, nodding to the guards. "Bring her out." They dragged Isabella from the car and led her to the hangar. Inside, it was cold and dark. It smelled of damp and rust. Matthew turned on his phone's flashlight, illuminating her face. "Listen carefully. You have two options. First, you sign the renunciation of the inheritance right here, right now. I'll take you back, give you $300,000, and we part as friends. Second option." He paused. "No one will ever find you. Understand?" Isabella was trembling. "They're looking for me. If I disappear, you'll be the first suspect." "Let them suspect. No body, no crime." "And the body?" Matthew smirked. "There's a deep swamp nearby. Even a tank could sink there." She was silent. Matthew took the papers from his pocket. "Here's the renunciation. Will you sign?" "No." Matthew nodded to one of the guards. The man struck Isabella across the face. She fell, her knee hitting the concrete floor. Matthew crouched beside her. "Do you think I'm joking? I killed Eleanor. Slowly, methodically. For 3 months, I slipped poison into her tea. I watched her waste away, and I didn't care. Do you think I'll treat you any differently?" Isabella lifted her head and looked him in the eye. Blood trickled from her split lip. "You're a murderer, and you will go to prison, sooner or later." Matthew stood up and kicked her in the stomach. She doubled over in pain. He crouched again. "I'm asking you for the last time. Will you sign?" Isabella was silent. Matthew straightened up, nodding to the guards. "Get the car ready. We're taking her to the swamp. We'll deal with her there." At that moment, sirens wailed outside. Matthew froze. The guards rushed to the door, but police officers were already storming the hangar, weapons drawn. "Freeze! Hands behind your head!" Matthew tried to run, but they tackled him and cuffed him. The guards were also detained. Johnson entered next, walked over to Isabella, and helped her up. "Are you all right?" "Alive," she rasped. "Good job. Hang in there. We've called an ambulance." They led Matthew out of the hangar and put him in a police car. He stared at Isabella with pure hatred. She stood, leaning on Johnson, and for the first time in a long time, she felt, "It's going to be okay." Johnson explained later at the hospital, "After the doctors had treated her wounds, we were tracking Asher's phone. When he left the city, we knew he was up to something. We looped in the local police, coordinated our actions. We got there just in time." "Thank you," Isabella said, holding an ice pack to her split lip. "If it weren't for you, don't think about it. The main thing is, you're alive, and Asher is going away for a long time now. Attempted murder, kidnapping, threats, plus the main case, the murder of his wife. He's looking at 20 years. Isabella nodded. The pain was gradually subsiding. She closed her eyes, picturing Eleanor Vance's face. The promise she had made to her, she had kept it. The next day, Detective Rodriguez questioned Matthew Asher. He sat in a holding cell, unshaven, his eyes hollow. "Matthew Asher, you are being charged with the premeditated murder of your wife, Eleanor Vance, by means of systematic poisoning. Also with the kidnapping and attempted murder of Isabella Garcia. Do you plead guilty?" "No." Matthew stared sullenly at the table. "We have the forensic report confirming the poisoning. We have witnesses who saw you buy the drug at the pharmacy without a prescription. We have surveillance footage from the clinic where you brought your wife tea in a thermos, after which her condition worsened. We have a recording of your conversation with Miss Garcia, where you explicitly say, 'I killed Eleanor. For 3 months, I slipped poison into her tea. Do you want me to play the recording?'" Matthew was silent. Rodriguez pressed play on the recorder. Matthew's voice was clear. "I killed Eleanor. Slowly, methodically. For 3 months, I slipped poison into her tea. I watched her waste away, and I didn't care." Rodriguez turned it off. "That's your voice." Matthew didn't answer. Rodriguez continued. "We also have the testimony of Miss Garcia, whom you kidnapped, beat, and threatened to kill if she didn't renounce the inheritance. Her injuries have been documented. Your security guards have already given statements, confirming they acted on your orders. Matthew, you've cornered yourself. The only thing that can help you now is a full confession." Matthew lifted his head. "I want a lawyer." "That is your right. This interview is over." Rodriguez left the cell and called Davis. "William, Asher is in custody. The court has ordered him held without bail. Flight risk and witness tampering are off the table. We can move to the next stage." "Excellent. I'm preparing the documents for the civil case. Asher is still contesting the will, but his position is even weaker now. The court will see a man accused of murdering his wife, trying to get her assets. It's cynical." "Agreed. What are his chances of winning the civil case?" "0. The will is flawlessly executed. The medical evaluation of her capacity, the video recording, the notary's testimony, it's all there. The court will dismiss his claim, no question. Then all that's left is the criminal case. I'm continuing to gather evidence. I'll soon hand it over to the DA's office to approve the indictment. Keep me posted." Rodriguez ended the call. The work was proceeding as planned. A few more weeks, and the case would go to trial. Meanwhile, in the neighboring city, Isabella Garcia was sitting in an apartment that Davis had rented for her, a safe house, round-the-clock security. She looked out the window at the November sky and thought about how her life had changed. A month ago, she was a nobody. Mopping floors, earning a pittance, living in a rented room. Now, she was the heiress to a vast fortune, a key witness in a criminal case, a woman someone had tried to kill. She didn't feel happy about the money. Not yet. Because she understood its price, the life of Eleanor Vance, and that price came with an obligation. The phone rang. It was Davis. "Isabella, how are you?" "Okay. The bruises are healing." "Good. I have news. Asher is in custody. The investigation is gathering the final pieces of evidence. The case will go to trial soon. The civil proceedings regarding the will are running in parallel. We should have a decision in a month." "And what should I do?" "Wait. Testify when asked, and prepare for the fact that after the trial, you will become the full legal owner of all of Vance's property." Isabella paused. "William, what if I don't want it?" "Don't want what?" "All of this. The money, the houses, the clinics. It's scary. I don't know how to live with all this." Davis sighed. "Isabella, Eleanor chose you for a reason. She saw something in you that she didn't see in others. Honesty, maybe, or just kindness. She wanted you to have a chance. Don't turn your back on it. Take the money, build a life. But remember, you promised her you would see this through to the end, and you will keep that promise." "I remember." "That's good. Hang in there. It will all be over soon." Isabella hung up and looked at a photograph of Eleanor Vance that Davis had given her, a middle-aged woman with an intelligent face and a steady gaze. She had lived a difficult life, built a business, lost love, and then was betrayed and murdered. Isabella said quietly into the empty room, "I will see it through to the end, I promise." In the county jail, Matthew Asher lay on his bunk and stared at the ceiling. His life was in ruins. Everything he had built over 3 years had crumbled in a month. Eleanor had beaten him, even from the grave. He remembered her last days, how she lay in the hospital room, pale and weak, how he had whispered to her, thinking she was unconscious, how he had rejoiced, and she had heard everything, understood everything, and delivered a counterblow from which he would never recover. Matthew closed his eyes. The cell was cold and stuffy at the same time. Water dripped somewhere. His cellmate was snoring. Life went on, but for him, it had stopped. He thought of Jennifer. She had left when she sensed danger. A smart woman. She had always been smarter than him. She had used him, just as he had used Eleanor. Matthew turned to face the wall. Another interrogation tomorrow, then the trial, then the sentence. 20 years, maybe more. He wouldn't live to see freedom. At his age, 20 years was a death sentence. He smirked bitterly. Eleanor knew what she was doing. She had left him his life, but she had taken away everything he had lived for. It was worse than death. He heard footsteps outside. The guards were bringing in someone new. The door to the next cell clanged shut. Matthew didn't move. He didn't care. Eleanor had won, and her victory was absolute. Half a year passed. Spring arrived unexpectedly, quickly. The city was filled with the scent of new greenery. Isabella Garcia stood at the window of her new apartment, looking down at the avenue below. The apartment was spacious, bright, with high ceilings. Her apartment, bought with Eleanor's money. A lot had changed in those months. The investigation had concluded. Matthew Asher's case was sent to trial. At the same time, the civil case over the will had ended. The court upheld Eleanor Vance's will as legal and valid, dismissing Asher's lawsuit. Isabella officially became the heiress to all the property. The house, the clinics, the commercial real estate, the accounts. She still couldn't believe it. 6 months ago, she was desperate for money, and now she had millions at her disposal. The phone rang. It was Davis. Isabella, the verdict is being read tomorrow. Will you be there? Yes, definitely. All right. I'll meet you at the courthouse at 9 a.m. The next day, Isabella arrived at the county courthouse. Davis was already waiting at the entrance with Jessica. They passed through the metal detectors and went up to the 3rd floor. The courtroom was small, but it was crowded with people. Journalists, relatives of other defendants, lawyers. Matthew Asher sat in the defendant's cage. He had lost weight, looked gaunt, with stubble on his face. Next to him was Jennifer, also a defendant, but on lesser charges. She stared at the floor, avoiding everyone's gaze. The judge entered, a stern, middle-aged woman in a robe with a white collar. Everyone rose. The judge sat, put on her glasses, and opened a folder. In the name of the state, this court, having considered the criminal case against the defendant, Matthew Asher, for the commission of crimes, has established the following. She began to read the verdict. Isabella listened intently. Every word was important. Asher, being married to Eleanor Vance, with the intent to seize her property, systematically added a toxic drug used in palliative care to her food and drinks. The defendant's actions led to the development of multiple organ failure in the victim and her subsequent death. The judge turned the page. Asher's guilt is confirmed by the following evidence. The conclusion of the forensic medical examination, which established the presence of a toxic substance in the deceased's body in a concentration inconsistent with accidental ingestion. The testimony of the pharmacist who sold the defendant the drug without a prescription. Surveillance footage from the pharmacy and the clinic. The testimony of witness Isabella Garcia. An audio recording of the defendant's confession made during the kidnapping of Garcia. Matthew sat motionless, clenching his jaw. The judge continued. Furthermore, Asher committed the kidnapping of Garcia with the intent to coerce her into renouncing her inheritance, used violence against her, and threatened her with murder. This guilt is confirmed by the victim's testimony, witnesses, the police officers who found Garcia in the abandoned hangar, the medical examination of her injuries, and the audio recording of the threats. She paused, looking at Matthew. The court finds Asher's guilt to be fully proven. No mitigating circumstances have been found. On the contrary, there are aggravating factors. The crime was committed for personal gain, with particular cruelty towards a close person. The defendant has shown no remorse and has not admitted guilt. Isabella clenched her hands in her lap. Davis placed a hand on her shoulder, reassuringly. The judge read the final part. Based on the laws of this state, the court sentences Matthew Asher to be found guilty of the crimes of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and coercion. By the totality of the crimes, he is sentenced to a term of imprisonment of 22 years, to be served in a maximum security correctional facility. Matthew flinched, grabbing the bars of the cage. Jennifer sobbed. The judge moved on to her case. Jennifer is found guilty of being an accessory to the crimes of kidnapping and coercion. She is sentenced to a term of imprisonment of 7 years, to be served in a general population correctional facility. The judge closed the folder. The verdict may be appealed. This court is adjourned. Everyone rose. The guards led Matthew and Jennifer out. Matthew turned back and met Isabella's eyes. His gaze was filled with hatred, but also something else, the realization of his complete ruin. Isabella looked at him calmly. She felt no triumph, just the fulfillment of the promise made to Eleanor Vance. She had seen it through to the end. They left the courtroom. Davis put an arm around Isabella's shoulders. "It's over. You're free." "Thank you," she smiled faintly. "To you, Jessica, Johnson, Detective Rodriguez, I couldn't have done it without you. We were just doing our jobs. You were brave. That's what matters." They descended the steps of the courthouse. The sun was shining outside. Isabella took a deep breath. For the first time in 6 months, she felt a sense of relief. Isabella became the rightful owner of Eleanor Vance's house, 3 private clinics, 2 shopping centers, office buildings, and bank accounts. The sum was enormous, tens of millions of dollars. Isabella hired managers for the clinics and real estate agents to sell some of the property. She didn't want to keep it all. It was too much. She sold the shopping centers and one of the office buildings, keeping the house and 1 clinic that was performing well and generating a stable income. The money from the sales was invested in secure assets. A portion was donated to charity, to a foundation helping cancer patients. Another portion was used to pay off all her debts, her own, her mother's, those of distant relatives. She paid Davis and his team a generous fee, more than they had asked for. Johnson, too. She gave Detective Rodriguez an expensive watch. He couldn't accept money, but he took the gift. "Thank you," Rodriguez said, shaking her hand. "Not everyone could withstand that kind of pressure. You did well. I just kept a promise. That's worth a lot." Isabella smiled. Rodriguez left, and she remained alone in Davis's office. He poured her a cup of tea and sat across from her. "What's next, Isabella?" "I don't know. I want to live a quiet life. Without fear, without being chased. I want to go to school, get a degree in psychology. I have the chance now." "That's a good plan. Eleanor would have wanted you to be happy." "I'll try." Davis nodded. "If you need anything, just call. I'll always be here to help." "Thank you." She finished her tea, said her goodbyes, and went out into the street. The day was warm and sunny. The city was living its usual life. People hurried about their business. Children played in yards. Shopkeepers served customers. Isabella got into a taxi and gave the address. Eleanor Vance's house, now her house, stood in a quiet neighborhood, surrounded by a garden. She went inside and walked through the rooms. Everything was clean and tidy. The housekeeper had retired but came once a week to air the place out and clean. Isabella went up to the 2nd floor and entered Eleanor's bedroom. The room was spacious and bright. On the nightstand was a photograph of a young Eleanor, beautiful and self-assured. Isabella took the house keys from her purse and placed them on the nightstand next to the photo. She said quietly, "Eleanor, I did everything you asked." Matthew was convicted. He got 22 years. He won't poison anyone else, won't deceive anyone else. Thank you for trusting me. I will try to be worthy of what you left me. She stood there in silence for a moment, then left the room, went downstairs, and sat in an armchair by the fireplace in the living room, closing her eyes. It was all over. Matthew was behind bars, Jennifer too. The inheritance was settled, the debts were paid. Life was beginning anew. Isabella remembered that day in the hospital room when Eleanor had called for her, remembered her words. If you do everything I say, you will never work as an assistant again. Back then, it had seemed like the delirium of a sick woman. Now, it was her reality. She opened her eyes and looked at the fireplace. Life had given her a chance. Eleanor had given her a chance, and she would not waste it. She kept the house but rarely lived there, preferring her apartment downtown. The clinic provided an income. The managers worked honestly. Isabella monitored the finances but didn't interfere in the day-to-day operations, knowing she didn't have the expertise yet. Isabella often thought of Matthew. Had she forgiven him? No. But she didn't feel hatred either, just indifference. Matthew was in the past, along with the life where she mopped floors and lived hand to mouth. That fall, Isabella enrolled in the university, in the psychology department. That was when she returned to Eleanor's house. She walked through the rooms, stopping at the bedroom. She went in, sat on the edge of the bed, and looked at the photograph. "Eleanor," she said, "a year has passed. I've managed. I've learned to live with this inheritance. I haven't wasted it, haven't gone crazy from the money. Matthew is in prison, serving his sentence. Jennifer too. Everything is as you wanted. Thank you for your trust, for the chance." She stood up, left the room, and closed the door quietly, carefully. Life went on, without revenge, without hatred, just life. And that was the best thing Isabella could do. Live with dignity, honestly, remembering the woman who had given her everything. Eleanor Vance had won not with force or anger, but with intelligence, calculation, and a belief that justice exists. Matthew had paid for every dose of poison, for every lie, for every second he watched his wife die. And Isabella got a chance. And she used that chance wisely.